Bang! A terrifying aura surged through the heavens, shaking the earth beneath. In an instant, a figure dashed forward with such speed that not even the radiant light emitted by the absolute saber or the revered life sword could catch up to him. This man was of imposing stature, his broad chest bared for all to see, muscles rippling with power. He hovered in the air, an immovable mountain that seemed to pierce the heavens, making all who beheld him gaze upwards in awe. Lord Gu Lin! Shushu Ran quickly dropped to one knee, his voice laced with respect. This was no ordinary cultivator. This was a shattering void tier expert, a master who could breach the combat range of the absolute saber and the revered life sword with ease. The earth-overturning seal mystical power? Is it truly in his possession? Gu Lin's voice rumbled with authority, his eyes cold as ice. As an elite of the Earth Dragon sect, his physique was his greatest defense. He did not need origin power to shield his body. He allowed the sword and saber to slash towards him, their blades sparking as they struck his chest, but they failed to so much as scratch him. The power of the attacks was nothing but the aftermath of combat. Indeed, my lord, Shushu Ran answered, bowing even deeper. Gu Lin nodded, his eyes narrowing. He made his move, thrusting out a palm to capture Ling Han. As a shattering void tier cultivator, Gu Lin was above any concerns of propriety. He had no qualms about acting with arrogance. After all, who could stop him? With such power, he could break through any obstacle. He looked down upon Ling Han, a mere spiritual infant tier cultivator, dismissing him as unworthy of any form of interrogation. Ling Han's mind raced. He longed to enter the Black Tower, but facing a shattering void tier expert, he knew he stood no chance unless the demon birth sword acted on its own. Yet there was no sign of the sword responding. The situation looked dire. You're truly impressive, daring to strike at a mere junior. A disdainful voice echoed through the air, followed by a massive palm that collided with Gu Lin's outstretched hand. The palms that clashed were as enormous as towering mountains, formed from pure origin power. Their collision reverberated with a thunderous crash that shook the heavens, sending ripples of destructive force in every direction. The sun above seemed to flicker, as if it might be snuffed out by the sheer power of their clash. A figure appeared, his body aflame. The man was slender, his long hair cascading over his shoulders, flames dancing upon it. The air around him shimmered with the power of his Dao, his feet surrounded by bursts of fire, making him resemble a king of flames. The Flame King! Gu Lin's voice was low, but the killing intent in his gaze was palpable. You dare to interfere in matters that do not concern you? And what of it? The Flame King answered, his voice cool and unconcerned. Why should I not meddle? Gu Lin's eyes flashed with fury. If you don't wish to see your end here, I suggest you leave immediately. The Flame King's hands rested behind his back as he observed Gu Lin calmly. Did you not know that this place is a historical site left by our ancient dynasty? The earth-overturning seal, which you so covet, is the mystical power of the Earth Spirit King, seventh of our line. Now that I am here, how could I allow this mystical power to fall into the hands of the five great sects? Gu Lin froze, his expression hardening. He understood now why the Purple Moon Kingdom had been so powerful. It had once wiped out the five great sects and nearly erased them from history. Had it not been for the immortal realm's influence, the sects would have perished. Could it be that the mystical power had been passed down? That would imply it had achieved the pinnacle of mastery. The Flame King seemed uninterested in the mystical power itself, yet his words carried the weight of something far greater. As realization dawned on Gu Lin, a shiver ran down his spine. The Purple Moon Kingdom was rising again, and its power was far stronger than before. The strength of their shattering void tier experts had multiplied, and the natural environment had produced countless new geniuses. The Purple Moon Kingdom had changed its name, but its power remained unchanged. Gu Lin steadied his breathing, trying to maintain composure. If you do not desire it, why intervene in others' affairs? Ha! The Flame King laughed coldly. It is not that I desire it, but I cannot allow an imbecile like you to take it. His eyes turned toward Ling Han. This mystical power was chosen by the person before you. He was selected by the Earth Spirit King, and it is his right to wield it, not someone like you. The insult stung Gu Lin's pride. He was a shattering void tier cultivator, Yet here he was, called an idiot by the Flame King. His rage flared, and with a vicious sneer, he summoned a giant serpent that slithered toward the Flame King. But the Flame King was unfazed. He extended his hand, and from it a monstrous fiery tiger appeared, its size rivaling a mountain. The tiger lunged, crashing into the serpent, and with a series of resounding explosions, the serpent was crushed underfoot, defeated. "Trash," the Flame King muttered, his tone dripping with disdain. Gulin's face turned ashen. Though his power was great, it was nothing compared to the Flame King's. This was a reminder of why the 8 great kings had once wiped out the 5 great sects. These beings were untouchable in their power. "Hey, Flame King, such a grand display!" A new voice broke through the tension, completely unbothered by the collision between the Absolute Saber and the Revere Life Sword. A man appeared, bearing a divine aura. His figure was slender, a long sword resting on his back. His eyes, however, were the most unusual feature. His pupils were shaped like 2 swords, an eerie and unsettling sight. "You must be the scum of the Heaven Sword sect," the Flame King said dismissively, his gaze flicking over the new arrival. The man smiled warmly, raising his hands in greeting. "Heaven's Sword sect, Ma Yutang, greets the Flame King." But the Flame King ignored him, his attention fixed on Ling Han. "Young man, your fate is indeed fortunate. You possess the sword made by His Imperial Majesty himself, and you have also claimed the Earth Spirit King's mystical power. It seems you are destined to cross paths with our Purple Moon Kingdom." Ling Han had no intention of lingering in this chaotic confrontation. He retrieved the Revere Life Sword and quickly made his way toward the Black Tower, with Jushuan-Er, Hu Niu, and Rabbit close behind. But just as he moved, Gulin stretched out his hand to seize him. Boom! A surge of flame exploded outward, sending Gulin stumbling back. The Flame King's voice rang out, filled with authority. "I said they could leave. Do you dare defy my words?" Gulin gritted his teeth in anger. "The Purple Moon Kingdom is long past. You are nothing but relics of an ancient time. Your era has ended." Ma Yutang, not willing to let Ling Han escape, reached out to grab him. But once again the Flame King intervened, his mighty presence halting Ma Yutang's advance. "Are you fools still trying to create trouble?" The Flame King's laughter echoed as he gazed at Gulin and Ma Yutang, both of whom were now united in their attempt to take him down. "Then we shall strike together." Ma Yutang and Gulin exchanged a look, their combined attack aimed at the Flame King. The Flame King laughed heartily, his figure expanding rapidly, transforming into a massive flaming titan, towering at least 30 meters tall. His body shimmered with golden patterns that coiled around him, forming chains of fire. "Regulation," Ma Yutang muttered, his face pale as realization struck. Translator. Editor. With the Flame King standing guard to hold off the pursuers, Ling Han naturally slipped away like a shadow beneath the moon, departing with effortless ease. Before long, he arrived at the region of the herb garden. Yet he did not pause to explore or linger among the spirit herbs. His figure merely flashed past the grounds like a streak of wind as he pressed onward, heading straight toward the exit of the mystery realm. While his body sped through the terrain, his thoughts churned like storm clouds. He pondered carefully over the road that lay ahead. After killing both Mao Jun and Chi Li Guo, could he still return to the Restore Heaven Academy? These 2 men were far from being merely ordinary deity transformation tier warriors. They also bore the identity of teachers of the Restore Heaven Academy. In the world of martial arts, opposing one's elders, especially slaying one's own teacher, was regarded as a crime so wicked that it could scarcely be redeemed. Even though Ling Han had never once met these 2 before, the crucial issue lay elsewhere. The stance of the Alchemist Society had always been ambiguous. All this time they had refused to acknowledge his identity as a heaven-grade alchemist. If they had done so, then even if he had slain 2 deity transformation tiers, what could anyone possibly do to him? In many situations, one's status truly carried tremendous weight. More importantly, he still possessed the Earth Overturning Seal. The number of elites from the 5 great sects who coveted this treasure would certainly not be small. Who could say that some despicable scoundrel would not suddenly attack and forcibly search his soul for its secrets? Leaving aside everything else, simply judging by the conduct of Mao Jun and Chi Li Guo alone, One could already see clearly that if the five great sects chose to abandon their dignity, they could cast away all shame and stoop to the lowest extremes. Ling Han pondered again and ultimately gave up the idea. His reason for remaining at the Restore Heaven Academy had originally been to gather followers. Yet now there were the Rain Emperor and Murong Qing who could take care of that task. And it even seemed they no longer required his presence. When it came to recruiting followers, the Rain Emperor was undoubtedly far more skilled than he was. After all, the Rain Emperor had once been a ruler of a nation, adept at winning the hearts of people and judging rewards and punishments with precision. Naturally, he excelled in such matters. Since that was the case, he could simply entrust everything to these two brothers of his. Then I shall simply assume the role of a disciple who was forced to rebel against the Restore Heaven Academy and stir up conflict with them. A smile slowly spread across Ling Han's face. It would not be long before he could step into the deity transformation tier. Once that happened, his battle prowess would reach the heaven tier. By that time, the number of people in the world capable of suppressing him would be pitifully small, and he would already possess the qualifications to roam the martial world without restraint. He resolved to join the forces of the Flame King and accelerate the destruction of the five great sects. Moreover, he had no idea when the 10,000-year period would reach its end. Perhaps it would occur in only a few years, or perhaps 100 years later. Whenever the time arrived, the five sects of the immortal realm would surely act and begin concocting and refining the realm pill. Thus, the five great sects must be wiped out as quickly as possible, unifying the entire world under a single ruler so that the final obstacle to splitting open the skies would be removed. With his mind made firm, Ling Han's heart no longer wavered. Zhuan Er, Hu Niu, and Rabbit naturally had no objections to his decision. As for Yuan Cheng, he and Li Feng Yu, along with his sister, Ling Han had no intention of bringing them along. He would simply allow them to return to the academy. When the day of battle arrived, he would issue a clarion call and have them switch sides. He stored Zhuan Er and Rabbit inside the Black Tower while unleashing the Thunderclap Ninth Heaven technique. His figure tore through the skies as he rushed forward at his utmost speed. Hu Niu likewise transformed into a streak of lightning, following closely at Ling Han's side, her strength seemingly far from exhausted. Meanwhile, the gold-seeking rat continued to ride along in Ling Han's grasp. From time to time, it would detect the presence of precious metals hidden within the earth, which Ling Han would casually collect along the way. Though this delayed his journey slightly, it had little real impact. 7 days later, he finally flew out of the mystery realm and lingered near the encampment of the Flame King's army, waiting for the Flame King himself to appear. Of course, he did not merely idle away the time. He immediately entered the Black Tower and began studying the earth-overturning seal. From the Flame King's earlier words, it seemed the 8 great kings had each mastered a single mystical power. Moreover, they had cultivated their respective abilities to an extremely high level. Otherwise, they could not have passed down these mystical powers as inheritances. Even the Thunderclap Ninth Heaven had been left behind by one of them. Yet what puzzled Ling Han was something else entirely. Why had the 8 great kings not learned from one another? If each of them had grasped all 8 mystical powers, how terrifying would that have been? Perhaps it is a case of biting off more than one can chew, he muttered softly before chuckling to himself. After all, he had never witnessed the 8 great kings unleash their full strength. How could he be certain they had not already mastered all 8 mystical powers? 8 mystical powers. Just thinking about it already stirs the blood, Ling Han said with a faint smile. But upon further thought, even if one possessed many mystical powers, it did not necessarily mean they could all be used effectively at the same time. For example, what would be the point of learning 2 archery-type mystical powers if only one could be fired at a time? Furthermore, dividing one's effort between 2 techniques of nearly identical nature was truly little more than a waste. Forget it. I will first master this mystical power, and then decide whether it suits me. Ling Han pressed the bead against his forehead. His consciousness surged forward like a tide. instantly triggering a reaction from the bead. It dissolved into countless streams of light that flowed directly into his mind. Within his sea of consciousness, the figure of a man appeared, tall and powerfully built. His hands were locked in seals as he circulated a mysterious technique. Complex patterns intertwined upon the man's hands, resembling an intricate diagram that conformed perfectly to the laws of heaven and earth. One could not help but follow every movement he made. Boom, boom. The sealed hands struck forth with terrifying force, shaking heaven and earth. When cultivated to a profound level, the earth-overturning seal possessed the power to destroy the very land itself. After the shadow finished its demonstration, it even left behind several words. Essentially, the earth-overturning seal was incomplete and represented only half of the true technique. The full method was called the skies-toppling earth-overturning seal. Only by combining the two seals together could one truly topple the heavens and overturn the earth, annihilating the universe. Ling Han felt his blood surge with excitement. The earth-overturning seal alone was already so formidable. If both seals were combined, then its might would surely reach an unimaginable level. He immediately began cultivating. Even with his extraordinary intelligence, his progress remained slow. After all, this was a mystical power rather than a mere martial arts technique. Within it were fragments of the laws of heaven and earth themselves. Fortunately, Ling Han's comprehension ability was astonishing. Even without a teacher to guide him, he gradually forced his way through the mysteries hidden within. He continuously murmured, ah, oh, and ye in astonishment. So that was the principle behind it. So that was how it worked. Half a month later, he finally reached the level of minor accomplishment and could at last execute the seal. He dragged Rabbit out to serve as his sparring partner. When the earth-overturning seal was unleashed, mysterious patterns covered both of Ling Han's hands. They glimmered with divine brilliance, making him appear like a deity descending upon the mortal world. The sight nearly caused Rabbit to flee on the spot. Yet Hu Nu pinned it in place with a fierce glare, leaving it no choice but to grit its teeth. Faced with the choice between sparring with Ling Han or being bitten by Hu Nu, Rabbit decisively chose the former, clearly demonstrating that Hu Nu was the more terrifying of the two. However, Rabbit was utterly shameless. How could such a fellow be expected to spar seriously? Before long, it loudly declared surrender and refused to continue the match no matter what. Ling Han did not press the matter further, as he had already gained a rough understanding of the strength and characteristics of this mystical power. Very powerful. However, it should still be inferior to the exterminating Dragon Star arrow. That said, the exterminating Dragon Star arrow was a long-range attack, whereas the earth-overturning seal was suitable for combat at all distances, near or far. When combined with his formidable physique, it could unleash perfect results. If I used my right hand to wield sword techniques and my left hand to unleash the earth-overturning seal, would the power not become even greater? Ling Han's mind brimmed with ideas. This was not impossible because the skies-toppling earth-overturning seal had originally consisted of two separate seals, one hand toppling the heavens, the other overturning the earth. Now that he had only learned the earth-overturning seal, why could he not execute it with one hand? Furthermore, the earth-overturning seal was originally meant to be performed with a single hand. However, since the legacy of the skies-toppling seal had been lost, the earth-overturning seal had evolved into a two-handed technique in order to unleash greater power. Ling Han deduced, what I must do is trace the source and rediscover its roots so the earth-overturning seal may return to its original form. Although using one hand may not surpass the strength of using both, the advantage lies in freeing my other hand. That hand could then wield a sword technique, or even unleash a fist or palm technique, but doing so would require me to divide my attention and perform two actions at the same time.